For more on this story, we're joined now on the line by the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen. A very good morning to you, Mr. Steenhuisen. With hindsight and everything that has been deliberated, is the Democratic Alliance still adamant for this process to go ahead?
What we're adamant for today would be for the Justice Portfolio Committee to refer the matter to the Rules Committee for the establishment of a formal parliamentary process. And that's in light of the issues that have come to light since the Jiba and Mkhwebane matter, where we believe it'll be far safer for Parliament to have an inviolable process that is firewalled against any litigation by the Public Protector. What we don't want to do is to embark upon the process that gets interdicted, it then gets delayed with appeals. So we are supportive of the view that Parliament adopts rules and a procedure, much like we did for Section 89 of the Constitution, impeachment of the President, and that procedure then is followed in the House. The Constitution empowers Parliament to make its own internal procedures and to deal with these types of matters, and we believe that given the litigious nature of the Public Protector and her track record of spending vast amounts of public money on frivolous cases, that in this instance it would be safer for us to ensure that we firewall the process that Parliament's going to embark upon from any potential legal challenge.
Does that mean that Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane gets a breather for now?
Well, it would be a very small breather because once the Rules Committee has adopted those rules and they're adopted by the House, that process can then proceed. But no doubt what she would invariably have done is approach the courts. As I said, she feels nothing about spending public money on frivolous cases and try to get an interdict from Parliament doing its job. She labours under the misconception that Parliament cannot remove her from office. It's obviously a clear misreading of the Constitution and the Public Protector Act. In fact, Parliament is the only body that is entitled to remove a Public Protector from office. But what we've got to do is make sure that there's a fair and due process and a process that is not then subject to any form of challenge once that decision is made of that committee either way.
I guess what South Africans are wondering generally is how come there was never a formal process put in place? Why was this overlooked, do you think?
Well, much like with Section 89 of the Constitution, where it talks about the impeachment of the President, there was no procedure in the rules of the National Assembly to follow that process. So this is obviously new ground. This is the first time we've had a Public Protector who has been found by the highest court in the land to have essentially lied, who's had a number of her judgments overturned, and has clearly gone rogue. So the framers of the Constitution put the safety valve in for removal of her, but Parliament never had to engage with this type of process before. And that's why it's not codified in the rules. And that's obviously something that rules, like other pieces of legislation, develop and evolve over time. And obviously this is now a situation which we're faced with, the Public Protector who's gone rogue, and Parliament must make sure it's got procedures to deal with it, particularly going forward if this situation ever arises again.
What role or position is the Democratic Alliance taking in the reported spat between the Public Protector and the Speaker of Parliament?
Well, we of course support the Speaker in this particular matter. We believe that the letter from the Public Protector is not only ill-tempered, but she is an institution that's supposed to work with Parliament to support democracy. Instead, I think the tone of the letter was very threatening and very confrontational. And I think that Ms. Mkhwebane completely misunderstands her constitutional position and the role of Parliament in holding her accountable. She said on numerous occasions that she's accountable only to God and only God can remove her from her position. Well, that's not true. The Constitution and the Public Protector Act empowers Parliament and gives Parliament power to exercise oversight over her conduct and the conduct of her office. And therefore, Parliament is well within its right to conduct any inquiry into her fitness to hold office and her ability to do the job.
So what time frames do you envisage it'll take to establish this formal parliamentary process and put it into place so that it's watertight?
Well, we will obviously, depending on the outcome of the Justice Portfolio Committee, will press the Speaker to ensure that the Rules Committee convenes hopefully as early as next week so that we can start that process. I don't think it will take that long, given the fact that we did significant work on amending Section 89, and fortuitously the grounds for removal or impeachment of the President are very, very similar to the grounds for removal of the Public Protector. So I think we've covered a lot of the ground already, and it'll be a matter of just codifying the process into the rules of Parliament, getting those adopted, and then kicking off on that process to conduct this inquiry into fitness to hold office.
So let's say, for argument's sake, the codifying process gets completed and you have your rules in place. You have previously not succeeded to be able to get through some motions in Parliament because of your numbers in the House. Do you think you will succeed in this one?
Well, I think the circumstances in this one are completely different, in that we now have a solid constitutional court finding against the Public Protector, which has found her to have lied to the court. She's also now got a significant number of cases that have been ruled against her, and a significant number of her reports that have been overturned and set aside. So I think that the body of evidence in this particular instance is now so overwhelming that even members of the governing party have to question whether she is not doing long-term harm to the office of the Public Protector, which would be cause significant harm to that important constitutional office going forward. And I certainly know there are a number of people in the governing party benches who agree with our view that she's not a fit and proper person. And I think they would be doing Parliament, the people of South Africa, and our Constitution, as well as the Office of Public Protector, a great disservice if they did not take appropriate action as the Constitution envisaged against the Public Protector who's clearly gone rogue.
In light of everything we've discussed, so what will happen at the Parliament's Justice Committee meeting today?
I assume that what will happen is that there will be a brief discussion, that it will then be referred back to the Speaker for referral to the Rules Committee, for the Rules Committee to give due consideration to a process to be followed for the removal or the institution of a procedure to remove the Public Protector, and then the Justice Committee will obviously reconvene, pick up the process a bit later down the line once those rules have been codified.
And finally, Mr. Steenhuisen, just a side note, the Democratic Alliance were the first to reveal the Bosasa letter for the 500,000 rands donation in Parliament, and another letter was revealed last week. What is the conversation amongst your party with the latest development of Mr. Watson's passing?
Well, obviously it's very tragic, and we extend our condolences to his family on the loss. It's terrible. Nobody wants to have that type of thing happen in their family. However, I think there's still a number of unanswered questions, both around the incident itself, but also Mr. Watson takes to his grave a number of key important pieces of information that were going to be vital for unlocking the disaster state capture saga. And I think it's going to be difficult to get to the bottom of some of those and to test some of the allegations of Mr. Agrizi in the absence of Mr. Watson. But clearly what we are calling for is a clear, open and transparent investigation to the circumstances surrounding his death, the circumstances of which, the timing of which, all appear significantly suspicious.
Thanks for your time this morning.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
DA Chief Whip John Steenhuisen.